In this video, we're going to talk about solving equations with inverse operations. The vocabulary for this video include isolate, which means to separate something from everything else, inverse operation, which means the opposite of a mathematical operation, and solution to an algebraic equation, a value or values of the variables that makes an equation true. When you solve an algebraic equation, you are isolating a variable on one side of the equal sign. For example, if you have to solve x plus 2 equals 5, you can figure out that the only thing you can add to 2 to get 5 is 3, so x equals 3. And that's how the x, you can see how the x is isolated on the left side of the equal sign. You solve for a variable by breaking down the equation in the opposite way to which it was built. This means that you do a series of inverse operations to both sides of the equation until you have isolated the variable. In most cases, the operations are conducted in reverse PEMDAS order. An exception to this would be when a term has the variable in the denominator. Okay, so what does all this mean? The best way to look at this is to look at an example. So here's an example, 3x minus 22 equals 5. Look at the side of the equation with the x in it. Remember, this is a simple example where there's only one variable, the variable only appears on one side. We will look at other more complex examples in future videos, but let's start with this one. So looking at this side, what coefficients and other terms are connected to the x on that side of the equation? Once we know that, what operations connect those terms to x? And which operations should we undo first? Well, let's look at the first question. What coefficients and other terms are connected to x? Well, before we go on, remember that 3x is the same as 3 times x. Okay, so there are two things connected to x, the 3 and the 22. Okay, what operations connect those terms to x? Well, the 3 is connected by multiplication, and the 22 is connected by subtraction. So which operation should we undo first? Well, if we're using reverse PEMDAS, let's call it SADMEP, we should start by undoing the any addition or subtraction and then move on to multiplication or division. Let's see what that would look like. Here's our equation, 3x minus 22 equals 5. To undo the subtraction, since that's the first thing we would do in our reverse PEMDAS order, we'll use the inverse operation of subtraction. I like to ask, what is the inverse operation of minus 22? Well, obviously the answer would be plus 22. So we'll add 22 to both sides of the equation. When we do that, it would look like this. And we're going to just add downwards. So 3x comes down because nothing's being added to that. The negative 22 and the positive 22 are added to equal 0. And the 5 and the 22 are added to make 27. Now we know that the 0 is optional. I like to show it initially just to show that what just happened, that we eliminated the 22. But when we're done, we're going to get 3x equals 27. So we're not done yet, though, because we still have the 3, and we need to get x by itself. So we still have to do one more inverse operation to get the x by itself. I'm going to replace the 3x with 3 times x, so we remember that it's multiplication. And then I'll ask, what is the inverse operation of times 3? Well, clearly that would be divided by 3. So we will divide both sides of this equation by 3 and simplify. When we do that, we're going to get x equals 9. 3x, which is 3 times x, divided by 3 is x, and 27 divided by 3 is 9. So at this point, it looks like we have a solution. We've got x isolated on the left side. We've got a number on the right side. We should be done. It's always good to conduct one more step, which is to double check the answer. And to do that, we'll take the original equation, but we'll substitute x equals 9 in the equation. So instead of saying 3x minus 22 equals 5, we'll say 3 times 9 minus 22 equals 5. Now right now we're just hoping that that's true. We have to prove it, but in this case you could tell that 27, 3 times 9 is 27, subtract 22 is equal to 5. So that means that our solution of x equals 9 was correct. All right, let's recap. So to solve an equation for a variable, figure out how the equation was written and specifically what numbers are connected to the variable and with what operations they're connected. Use reverse PEMDAS to know which order to undo the operations in, and continue to use the inverse operations until the variable is by itself. Note that this is a simpler example to show the general concept. My next couple of videos will go into some variations of this, such as solving equations with variables on both sides. I hope this video was helpful. Please leave your comments below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.